we are calling 79 degrees a cool front because it is right now. It is absolutely a cool front for all of us.
Summer came fast. Summer came fast for us.
It did. It did.
It sure did. And
well, hopefully more people can join if they have friends that haven't been able to join, to tell them to go directly to YouTube. Or if they want to join from their computer, they have to probably refresh their history and go directly to our link.
we have over 150 people signed up.
Oh, good.
And right now we have 67 participants with us live. So that's excellent.
We're happy to have you. Yes.
And I'm texting people right now so they can join in.
And we're going to get started. All right, Eloise, if you will go ahead and click on the next slide, please.
Yes, I will. Did it move? Oh, nope. Here we go. Let me try this again.
No problem.
Not what I expected to happen here. All right.
It's a little tricky.
There we go. Yeah.
You got it.
Is this what we want to see?
Yes, we got it. Thank you. All right. Thank you. Thank you all for joining us. Welcome to our webinar. We're very excited about our webinar today, and we're excited to have you with us. I just want to give you a few logistics before we get started. My name is Valentina Gonzalez, and I'm one of the educational consultants with Seidlitz Education, and we welcome you. We are recording today's webinar, and if you are registered for the session, you will receive an email with a link to the recording and the presentation slides in about 24 to 48 hours. So if you're here with us live, feel free to chat with the panelists and all attendees by clicking on the little chat feature, and be sure that you ensure that you are chatting with all panelists and attendees instead of just to all panelists, so everyone can see what you're chatting about. If there is some type of Zoom failure, be sure to meet us back on seidlitzeducation.com and click on webinars so we can join back up and continue our learning. I'm going to pass it on over now to Anna Mattis, and she's going to introduce our wonderful presenter for today.
Thank you so much, Valentina. Yes, I'm Anna Mattis. I'm a consultant as well with Seidlitz Education, and it is my pleasure to introduce Aloise Miller to those of you who had not had the distinct pleasure of meeting her yet. Eloise grew up in bilingual programs her entire life, both in Mexico and Guatemala, as well as all the work she did throughout her schooling and now in her career. In the late 80s, she was out in California working with migrant workers and Southeast Asian farmers. That brought her to Texas in the 90s, where she continued to work in bilingual programs. Currently, at the moment, she is an instructional coach in a district here in Texas, as well as a consultant for Seidlitz Education. So you may have caught her training on the wonderful Toma la Palabra, which she loves so much, and we were just chatting about it for a bit. In her role, Eloise is instrumental in supporting dual language programs across the entire state, and she works both as a coach and a consultant in establishing and maintaining these programs. And you're going to get a little bit of a taste of that today in the ABCs of dual language programs, which she will wonderfully present to you now. So without further ado, take it away, Eloise.
Thank you very much, Anna. So I want to start with a little bit of inspiration, because that's always like what we do. So here we go. I'd like to share the idea that the ability to process multiple languages doesn't only make a person bilingual, but biliterate and bicultural. And here in Texas, or anywhere in the United States, it's not only just two cultures, but really multicultural. And I'll talk about being more than bilingual as we get going. This is something that I want us all to hold as we are going through the presentation. Bilingual education allows students to learn English better, not faster. I always like to think that there is more to life than increasing its speed, and a good bilingual program is the epitome of that. Our students will learn English and Spanish better. One of the greatest benefits of a true bilingual education, a good bilingual program, is the cognitive benefits that the students gain in being a part of a good bilingual program. And those are actually measurable. And we could go into that in depth if we ever have the opportunity to meet, but that is one of the greatest benefits. Now I want to do one last thing, a little bit from the heart. And this is something that I always think about. And to have another language is to possess a second soul. And that goes back to that whole idea of being bicultural or multicultural, and just knowing how to move through so many situations with so many different kinds of people. So before we get going with our first letter, I want to share with you some objectives. So the objectives for this webinar are, first, we're going to have a content objective, and you will hear a list of 26 the concepts to consider when establishing a successful dual language program. And the language objectives, let's read it together. And I want you all to read it because I'm going to listen to you through the Zoom airwaves. Together it says, participants will share one concept they hadn't considered and make an adjustment they plan to make by writing in the chat using the sentence stem. So now let's say the sentence stem together. A concept I hadn't considered is and I plan to So as you're watching the presentation, I want you to think about what is one thing that possibly you hadn't considered before, and what might you do to include that in your dual language program. So let's get going. Oh no, wait, one more thing I need to tell you. I'm a linguist. I love language and everything that comes with language. So I love to play with language. So you're going to see a lot of alliteration. And I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed writing them for you. So let's get started with our ABCs. Letter A. Administrators are advocates, are always welcome. So now you see what I mean by the alliteration. So a successful program must have the full support of the campus administrators. They are the instructional leaders, and their guidance and leadership is what's going to ensure that the program on your campus is successful. They set the campus expectations. So if they are a true leader and follow everything, the teachers will adhere to the expectations. And the administrators are the people, the campus administrators are going to monitor the successful implementation of whatever program your district chooses to have. So A is for administrators. B, biliterate brains can read books and write ballads in both languages. Now, do you see where I'm going with this, all of this alliteration? Many people say to be bilingual is enough. They can learn their second language at home. But we truly want people to be biliterate. And what does that mean? Well, we have 3 definitions that I will share with you. A person who is bilingual is a person who can speak both languages. A person who is biliterate can read and write proficiently in 2 languages. A biliterate student who participates in an additive program has a formal register and an informal register in 2 languages. What I mean by that is this. When you speak at home, you use an informal register. You use your common language, what you would use, with your family. But when you are learning in academia and at school, you use a formal register. So bilingual students who participate in a bilingual program become biliterate. They speak formally and informally in English and in Spanish, but they can also write and read. So they have a formal academic language. So that is the goal of a good bilingual or dual language program. I think at this moment I need to stop and just make a clarification. I talk about a bilingual program, and many people now call it dual language program. So I use them still interchangeably. It's a program in which students are learning 2 languages. I will talk about different types of bilingual programs as we move through our session. So some people I thought maybe might be asking in the chat, you know, isn't it dual language or isn't it bilingual? So I thought I would make that clarification, but let's keep going. Culturally relevant curriculum. So consider crafting a culturally relevant curriculum, and that is essential, especially in this day and age. Including students' cultural background in our programs is going to help them connect to our programs. It's going to improve their sense of worth of being in the program. When students believe that they're being represented in instruction, it definitely improves student engagement and engages them and increases achievement. And by affirming students' cultural, it's a community, it taps into their funds of knowledge. And as we talk about funds of knowledge, it's basically the information and the knowledge that they arrive at school with. So we want to use a curriculum that elevates and engages their prior knowledge, what they come from, validating them. So as districts are selecting resources or making decisions, there are now many publishing companies who are working diligently at cultural representation. There are anti-bias curriculums. There are books and children's stories and ABC books that represent all of the different cultural backgrounds that we would find in our schools. So letter D is a big one. Here it goes. This is the one. District decisions are definitely data driven. A successful dual language or successful bilingual program will be measured in the data. The students will perform well, and if the program is implemented effectively and correctly. So the first thing a district wants to do is to find the research that supports the type of program they are wanting to implement. All across the United States, different districts in different states have been implementing many different types of bilingual or dual language programs. And there is extensive data to demonstrate what results they've been able to have. And what you want to do is track the students who participate in the program that your district is doing. So if you have an early exit program or an ESL only program, and notice how the students are doing, and then compare your students to another district who might have a similar demographic, who is trying something different. Because just because a program works very successfully in Oklahoma might not be the best program for Florida or a district across in your state where that has a very specific demographic. But it's quite different from the one in your state. Does not mean then that you should automatically adopt that program. So do your research. And finally, consider longitudinal studies. All across, there are several researchers who have done extensive longitudinal studies. We know of the work, we follow the work of Thomas and Collier, we follow the work of Literacy Squared, among just to name a few, who have done longitudinal studies that are anywhere, between 8 to 20 years of following students in different dual language programs. So D is for data. Let the data tell you what's the best program for your area. I love that the letter E has an elephant, because what we're going to do right now is we're going to talk about the elephant in the room of dual language or bilingual programs. English language development. English language development is an essential element of every bilingual or dual language program. So often we hear people say, but shouldn't they be learning English? Shouldn't they be learning English? And remember that very first slide I shared with you where I said your students will be learning English better, not faster, right? So explicit instruction of English non-transferable skills are essential. We want our students to first, to learn everything that the research tells us that, they need to learn in their first language, but we need to add English and we need to very specifically teach them the non-transferable skills. So what does this look like? In the pre-K and in kinder, possibly through first grade, extensive oral language practice. Here at Silence, we have one of our books is the seven steps to a language rich classroom, in which we give you many, many suggestions of how to develop oral language with our students, academic language. So many opportunities, structured opportunities in pre-K, kinder, first grade for the students to practice their oral language. And then as the students have a basis or a framework of their Spanish literacy, then we add the non-transferable English skills. And so add English in an intentional and a sequential manner using a good English language development curriculum. So please don't ever let anybody say, but shouldn't they be here to learn English? The answer is yes, absolutely. But they're going to add English to their linguistic repertoire. We're going to be biliterate. F, if you notice the F, the picture that I showed looks like it's a framework. So find a framework and follow with fidelity. And what I mean by a framework is a plan that starts in pre-K and goes on sequentially. And the key to success is having everybody follow it with fidelity. So select a program model that meets the needs of all of your stakeholders. Like I mentioned earlier, do your research, find the data. What's your demographic? What programs have worked with success in your area or with students like the ones in your schools? Determine the time and treatment of each language per grade level. Now, I've already shared with you what I think is most successful. As your students are in the early childhood grades, pre-K, kinder first, you're doing a lot of English oral language development. You've dedicated a certain amount of time and you have a program that you follow with fidelity for their oral language development. And then as you start to get into first grade, middle of first grade, second grade, third grade, you start to have specific time blocks, instructional blocks, either content blocks that are done in Spanish and some that are done in English. But there needs to be a framework where everyone in your district or in your on your building site, your school is following. And consistently use best practices in all of the academic blocks. Now we have a lot of, at Silence Education, we've done a lot of work at developing academic language with students. And we have a lot of, an extensive collection of really good practices that have been tried and true to help students increase their ability in English and in Spanish. So F is for framework or for fidelity. This is a beautiful one. And you see the G and all the lovely growth and plants growing on it. And plants take the time to grow. And so grow a great program gradually. So I've seen some districts try to open up too many schools at once or start with too many grade levels or make a drastic change. So begin with early childhood, maybe pre-K, K, or as far as first grade, and then add an additional grade level at a time. So your program is growing organically. The students are moving through the program year after year with a sequential structure in which they are going to develop their Spanish literacy skills and their English literacy skills. Carefully take your time, recruit faculty, highest possible faculty, and provide intensive support for them. The teachers are going to be your first line with the students, and they're going to be the people implementing this program. So, supporting the teachers, because being a good dual language teacher is a lot of work. And cautiously curate quality resources, just kind of like I had told you at the beginning, the letter for C, culturally appropriate resources in a curriculum. So take the time, think less is more, quality over quantity. A good storybook, a good picture book can be leveraged in so many ways. So invest over time. H is for a holistic biliteracy framework. This is a term that we use that comes to us from the work of the Escamillas and with Literacy Squared. Dr. Lara used a lot of this thinking in her book, Toma la Palabra. So what does it mean to have a holistic biliteracy framework? Have a plan to teach literacy in both languages. And as we do with anything in teaching, we talk about oracy, we talk about the speaking, using the language. We have the reading and the writing and the interacting. So by that we have, very holistic. We also want to think about using what the students have developed in one language and leveraging that to continue their development in the second language. Use instructional methods that have proven to work for emergent bilinguals in the United States. Sometimes we adopt or just collect resources that come from Spain or Mexico or Venezuela, and they're wonderful resources. But we want to make sure that the methods that we're using are most appropriate for students who are learning two languages in the United States. And finally, we want to leverage the students' metalinguistic skills, and we will get into metalanguage as we go forward. Intentional instruction involves innovative initiatives. Now, there are so many possibilities for different initiatives to use, but what we want to do is we want to just simply select a few instructional practices and master them. So if using language structures and QSSSA, the 7 steps is one of the instructional practices or methods that are going to be used in your school, make sure that we have opportunities for repeated practice and mastery of that. The dictado or some of the other instructional practices that are specifically designed and developed here in the United States for students in the United States are the ones we want to see over and go. Include cross-language awareness, many opportunities for the students to use their metalinguistic skills. What do I know in one language? How can I use it to help me in my second language? And interaction among the students is going to continue to develop their language in both languages. J, justify your program to the naysayers judiciously. There is still a lot of misinformation about bilingual education and what occurs in a bilingual education program. So it's important to know the facts about language acquisition and the importance of biliteracy. Know your facts, know your language, know the terminology. Gather information about the graduation rates about students that participate in dual language programs. You'd be surprised to see how well they do on their SATs and on their ACTs. And students who are in dual language programs, even if it's an early exit program where they're no longer receiving language support in 4th or 5th grade, their graduation rates compared to students who don't participate in dual language are noteworthy. So prepare your elevator speech. You need to know, how are you going to convince parents? How are you going to convince other educators? How are you going to, get people to support you in your pursuit of a successful dual language program? Okay, here it goes. Keep it simple. I've had the opportunity to work with many districts, and they're struggling to maintain and watch their dual language programs grow. And so as I enter into conversations with them, they have different programs at every different school. And it's, in my thinking, is like, you're doing too much. So choose a straightforward instructional model. And as I meet with you, we can talk more about what that means, but truly as simple as possible. A consistent daily schedule is going to really help in the implementation of your program. An uncomplicated, consistent program is definitely going to be your most, routines are going to be the most effective. If you want fidelity, if you want to make sure that your program is successful, the most thing I can tell you is keep it simple. L is for lock it in and elevate language of instruction. As you work with the teachers and you're giving the teachers support, it's important that all the teachers know the academic language, the content language of each content area, specific in English and in Spanish. Practicing the language structures, using questions, well-developed questions and sentence stems that get progressively more challenging as you're moving through a subject or content area, grade by grade. And use what the students' knowledge of both languages resourcefully. The students are emergent bilinguals here in the United States. They should learn about cognates. They should learn of how some words that are more advanced in mathematics and in science are, similar to each other, that they come from Latin roots. So, and we want the teachers in their classroom, remember we had the conversation earlier about register, to use a formal academic register when they're teaching in English and in Spanish. Multilinguals are masters of meta-language and meta-linguistic awareness. So what we want to do is maximize the opportunities to compare the similarities and differences between the languages. Teach the metacognitive linguistic skills across both languages, and embed instructional practices designed to examine language structures. So metalinguistics and being aware of their metalinguistic skills is going to go a long way to improving instruction and outcomes in a program. Nave, La Cosecha, Tabe, it's important to join bilingual associations because that's a great place to continue learning. It's a great opportunity to meet other people in the profession and see what they are doing. And I love this. This comes from Manuel Escamilla. Estamos aquí para compartir, no para competir. By going to these different sessions and conferences, we share what we know, and together we grow. Oracy. Oracy activities occur optimally in lessons. Well-developed oral language skills lead to higher literacy achievement. This comes to us in the idea that we need to have structured opportunities for the students to speak in both languages. Now, the language that you use, but I mean language chosen, not necessarily English or Spanish, but the specific terminology and the vocabulary needs to match what we're learning. and then it needs to get more complex throughout the instructional time of a concept or over the years. So as the students grow in their ability to use both languages, our language structures need to become more complex. Again, that goes to returning to the practitioners, the teachers, the people who are working with the students have a strong mastery of the academic language in both languages. P is for parental involvement. You need to get the families on your side. They're going to be the advocates in the community. They're going to be able to tell people how well their child is doing, and how they're growing. And how they can speak to the family and also read and write in both languages. So having parent education opportunities, bringing the parents onto the campuses will spread in the community, and then you will have many people choosing to participate in your programs. Now, this is a way to ensure that your program grows, offering repeated quality professional development. Select again a few approaches and offer that training again and again. The teachers will understand that these are the initiatives that are going to be expected over and over. And then again, think about keep it simple, just a few good initiatives, a simple framework that can be followed with fidelity will give you the results that you're looking up. And the truth is, it's a lot easier to follow up on a few good, clean, simple initiatives than over, many, many different ones. Research the regulations. You need to know what is expected from your state in terms of, bilingual compliances. Compliance can be very complex, and it can also, create a lot of concern. Funding for the program comes with a lot of regulations, and a program that has very clear structures and systems to guarantee oversight is going to be very successful. When we talk about our students, are they learning English and Spanish simultaneously? Or are they learning one language and then the other? If they're learning them at the same time, they're simultaneous. If they are adding their second language, they are sequential. But most of the students in the United States, born ELs, are kind of simultaneous. They are emergent bilinguals, and they use what they can in either language. So they pull from their bilingual linguistic repertoire. So I always like to think of our students here as, simultaneous. When we think about literacy, we have a very clear trajectory of what needs to occur in English for monoliteracy. But bilingualism has its own unique trajectory. It has a very distinctive trail, I like to say. So the instructional approaches that are required for bilingual students are different and have been specifically designed. So if you look in Toma la Palabra, there is a lot of discussion and ideas and suggestions of approaches that work best with bilinguals in the United States. Students use what they have in each language to deepen their understanding. And we work with the students to tap into their linguistic abilities using both language. So the trajectory of biliteracy, of bilingualism, is different from monolingualism. Now, uniformity across your district, across the bilingual campuses in your program is going to also be an important part of a successful program. Everybody involved must understand the objectives of your specific dual language program. Follow one program across the district, and that's going to yield you with consistent results. And equitable support to all the participants, to the teachers, to all your different campuses, regardless of if it's a title campus or a non-title campus. V is value depth of learning versus velocity of learning. You will hear, I think you come by this in a recurring thing. Your children will learn English better, not faster. And most of what the students learn in their first language, they can transfer to their second language. But systematic instruction of non-transferable skills is ongoing. As the students continue through their program, their skills in English and in Spanish will settle themselves into full proficiency in both ways. But for a long time, the students are pulling from both of their linguistic repertoires as they go. The W is always going to be for writing. We want the students to have many opportunities to produce. So there is a specific trajectory of writing development and expression that comes with biliterate students. They will use whatever they have to communicate. And so sometimes their writing will be bilingual, even though the instruction was in one language or the other. So practitioners, you need to have a program that maximizes writing opportunities in both languages daily. Obviously, in the pre-K and the kinder beginning of first grade, it's a lot of oral language development and a lot of oral rehearsal. But as the students develop their ability to write, we want them writing in both languages. And their metalinguistic skill is, awareness is cemented through writing. One of the really good strategies we use for that is el dictado, which is covered in our Toma la Palabra. And now this is for you. Expand your knowledge, meet the experts. Attend conferences like I mentioned earlier, NAVE, La Cosecha, TABE, whatever is available to you. Invite researchers to your district. Host book and article studies on a regular basis. Now that we're doing everything via webinar, we're hosting lots of book studies. So that's a really good way for us to stay connected with you from a distance and continue doing our good work together. And take expeditions to successful programs. I try to get an X word in there. Fine. Why? Yes, it really does take 5 to 7 years to learn a second language. So this is where we talk about our BICS and CAL, our basic intercommunication skills. The student, an average learner will be able to converse quite well in 2 years. But that's different from cognitive academic language proficiency. That does take 5 to 7 years. If we give the students a good long time to work in a good dual language or bilingual program, and we allow them to stay in a biliterate program through 5th or 6th or 7th grade possibly, they will have solid biliteracy forever. They will have good cognitive academic language proficiency. So ideally, we would hope that they could stay through 6th grade. Z, zone of proximal development, two-way models are the zenith. So I waited to share my idea of the best dual language program. So I've seen a lot of dual language programs, and the one that I've seen that has yielded the highest result is a two-way dual language program. In this program, it is a bilingual program in which part of the participants are native English speakers and part of the participants are native Spanish speakers. The learners from the majority and the minority language interact daily. So if we look at Vygotsky's theory of the zone of proximal development, you see that in a two-way dual language program, you have it all. They have a more knowledgeable peer if they're learning in English or if they're learning in Spanish. There are natural social interactions for the students to constantly develop their language skills. and they receive all the scaffolding and guidance they need from a classmate. So those were my ABCs. So next time, maybe you will sing with me. So after zooming through these ABCs, I want us to go back to the question that I asked at the beginning. What is one concept that you possibly hadn't considered? So if we were in a regular classroom or in a presentation working together, I would ask you to think about the question. And once you had an answer to the question, I would ask you to signal. I know many of you guys are familiar with QSSA, so here's my question. So my signal is I'm going to ask you to tap your forehead, and I'm going to visualize you out in the cyber world, tapping your forehead, and that's telling me that you are ready. So now we are going to practice our sentence. Well, we're going to use the chat box, and you're going to respond using the sentence stem. A concept I hadn't considered is I plan to repeat with me. Yes, I heard you. So now I invite you to use the chat and answer using our sentence stem.
Eloise, can I take a minute then while people are responding to you? Can I ask you some questions while we're waiting?
Yes, please.
Let's make good use of our time. Okay, so one question you had was, what is recommended when the researched frameworks do not meet the needs of some campuses on districts?
Well, then it would be a matter of truly determining what the specific need of some campuses. I guess maybe having 1 or 2 models in a district and trying to create a cohort among those campuses. So it's very hard to go at it alone. So if you have just a few campuses working together, then maybe you would have more than 1 model, but support is key.
Right, absolutely, absolutely. Another question that we had was, do you know of a good resource for the type of data that you talked about? So specifically graduation rates, test scores for dual language students. What's a good resource that they could go to?
One of the places I would go to is your educational agency. So if you know of a district in your state that is showing good success, then a lot of that information is available through your education agency. That might be a good place. Sometimes some states have region offices, and that information might be available in the different region offices.
Great. Wonderful. You're getting a lot of good answers. What I love about the answers you're getting is they're completely varied.
Oh,
right?
I love it.
So nobody's repeating things. It's wonderful. Okay, while we're waiting, do you want to go ahead and advance some slides, or we're getting a couple more answers in? Wonderful. Oh, it's your thank you slide. So we are so thankful for everybody that joined with us through the ABCs. Eloise is going to get a copy of this chat afterwards, so she's going to get to see the wonderful concepts that you are all going to take with you. We're going to close with just a couple of things that are coming up from Sidelets Education. So if you want to go ahead, we do a Sidelets Twitter chat the first and third Tuesday of every month, and it's hosted by Valentina Gonzalez. You can just log into Twitter and join us at #SideletsEd. Also, we have posts that come out almost weekly on the Sidelets blog, so you can keep up with us there. Now, for the time being, this is the last webinar that we have of our pandemic series, let's call it that, since March. And so what you need to do, if you want to get any recordings of our previous ones, we have a very new shiny formatted website. You can find it there under the webinars tab. You'll have a recording of each of our past webinars. You can get a copy of the slides, and you'll be able to find, especially this one. You're going to need to wait about 24 hours, but if you signed up to register, you'll get an email with a link to this webinar as well as the slides. So we wanted to answer that one there. Okay, go ahead to the next one. I already see a question I can answer. Yes, so we are having some questions about Dr. Monica Lara's Toma la Palabra conference, and no, sorry, Dictado conference, excuse me. We have these 4 that are upcoming right now in our Seidlitz schedule. June 18th, Dr. Stephen Fleener's High Yield Strategies for Teaching Science. June 27th, Dr. Patricia Morales is doing another Texas ESL prep for the ESL cert. Dr. Lara on July 20th. We are all so excited about that one. La Práctica del Dictado is coming out and she will be joining us there. And then finally, Carol Salva's June 12th conference is already sold out. So we've added a second date for June 29th, and that's her Boosting Achievement Force Life. You can get information on all of those on the website. They'll have the information that you need, some resources we might recommend, as well as a place for you to register for those. Those are all about 3 hours long in length. And then finally, I think, let's see, Eloise, if we have one more slide, or no, that's it. That's it. So I'm going to pass it back to the ladies to give everybody else a chance to say goodbye. And thank you for joining us.
Eloise, we just want to thank you for sharing today. We loved your information and we're excited to go back and share it with everyone else.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you, everybody out in cyber world. I love you and I love to share about bilingual education. So thank you for spending the morning with me.
And I know they loved the PowerPoint and they're requesting it. So yes, everybody's going to get it. So I hope the information was valuable and you can implement it in your districts, in your classrooms. So thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you all for joining us. Have a wonderful day. Bye,
Love
everyone.
you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.